This wasn't just another explosion in occupied Donetsk. This was the night an entire terror machine went offline. For years, Russians used the ruins of Donetsk International Airport as a symbol. We took it, we held it, we bled for it. They turned it into a monument of propaganda. But on November 5th, that symbol became something else, a perfect target. Because inside those shattered terminals and broken runways, Russia had built one of its most important Shahed and Geran-2 drone hubs, a place stacked not just with drones, but with warheads, fuel, launch equipment, command nodes, and the infrastructure that powered Russia's long-range terror campaign against Ukrainian cities. And in one coordinated operation, Ukraine didn't just hit it, they deleted it. Stay with me, because once you see how this strike was built, how it was executed, and what it destroys beyond the fireball, you'll understand why this may be one of the most strategically important deep strikes of the entire war. And if you're new here, don't go anywhere. This is MilitaryHUB. We break down how modern wars are really fought, behind the headlines and beyond the propaganda. If you find this kind of detailed breakdown useful, remember that for later. The night of November 5th in occupied Donetsk started with a flash on the horizon. People there are used to distant booms. They are used to the sound of artillery, the dull thud of explosions, the occasional glow over some anonymous depot. But this was different. The light didn't vanish. It spread. First one impact, then another. Then a chain of detonations, rolling through the airport zone so violently that the sky above the ruins of Donetsk International didn't just light up. It pulsed. Flames climbed, shockwaves followed, and for several long minutes, the airport looked less like a military facility and more like a volcano erupting from the inside. Thermal imagery released by Ukraine's Special Operations Forces captured massive heat signatures tearing through multiple structures. Secondary explosions ripped across the complex, one after another, the unmistakable sign of fuel, ammunition, and drone warheads cooking off together. Ukrainian unmanned systems and long-range assets had found their mark, and what those cameras recorded was not the destruction of a random storage site, it was the unmaking of a network. Because that airport hub was believed to be storing up to 1,000 Shahed and Geran-2 drones and roughly 1,500 warheads, alongside fuel depots and launch infrastructure. Ukraine's unmanned systems forces later reported that over 90% of the systems used in the operation reached their targets. That number should make Russian planners very uncomfortable. To understand why this strike matters, you have to understand what Donetsk Airport had become. Once, it was a modern civilian gateway. Glass, steel, departures, arrivals. Then, in 2014 to 2015, it turned into one of the bloodiest battlegrounds of the war in Donbass, fought over until it was shattered into concrete bones. For years, it stood as a ruin. But by 2024 and 2025, analysts started to notice patterns. Satellite images and open-source investigators documented gradual changes. Damaged surfaces are being cleared, structures reinforced or rebuilt, covered shelters are appearing, hardened boxes, activity clusters inside the airport perimeter, not the random chaos of a frontline warehouse, the deliberate footprint of a logistics and launch hub. At the same time, Ukraine was being hit again and again by waves of Shahed drones. Cheap, slow, explosive drones with engines that sound like lawnmowers and warheads that hit like missiles. Russia used them to probe air defenses, drain expensive interceptors, strike power plants and logistics hubs, and keep civilians awake in the dark. They weren't about elegance, they were about volume. You launch enough of them, and some get through. Donetsk's location was ideal for that model, close to the occupied territory, well connected, deep enough behind the front line that Russian command could pretend it was safe, perfect for mass storage, assembly, and launching of Shahed and Geran variants towards central and eastern Ukraine. In other words, this wasn't just a warehouse. It was a node in Russia's industrialized drone war. And nodes can be mapped. Ukraine didn't wake up one morning, glance at Donetsk Airport, and roll the dice. This was methodical. Intelligence services, special forces, UAV operators, and OSINT communities spent months watching. They tracked vehicle movements to and from specific structures. They watched the timing of arrivals and launches, They studied the correlation between drone attack waves and activity inside the airport footprint. They spotted new shelters and secured containers that lined up far too well with what you'd build for drone storage and warhead preparation. Each piece of data on its own was just a hint. But in modern warfare, hints stack. Commercial satellite imagery, social media posts, Russian military bloggers leaking footage they shouldn't, intercepted communications, infrared signatures, launch trajectories. All of it gets layered. Eventually, Donetsk Airport stopped being the old ruins and became something far more interesting. A confirmed high-value target. The suspected presence of pre-launch zones, manual control posts, fuel reserves dedicated to drone operations, and tightly clustered storage sites suggested a design built for efficiency. Drones are prepared, armed, fueled, and launched in rotations. Warheads staged and ready. A streamlined terror machine aimed at Ukrainian skies. What Ukraine planned next wasn't a symbolic strike, it was a decapitation. When the operation finally launched on November 5th, it did not look experimental. It looked like the execution of a plan that had been rehearsed on maps, screens, and simulations many times before. Reconnaissance assets had already defined the coordinates. Special operations forces had likely validated priorities, where the drones were, where the warheads were stacked, which buildings housed fuel, which hosted communications and control gear. Unmanned systems units and long-range fire support were integrated into one synchronized attack profile. The first impacts ignited key nodes. Moments later came the chain reaction. The reason the night sky above Donetsk Airport burned so bright was simple. Everything was too close together, too tightly packed, too optimized. You don't get that volume of sequential detonations from a token ammo crate. You get it from hitting stockpiles. You get it from striking where fuel, explosives, and hardware share the same space. Ukraine's reported 90% hit effectiveness is more than a statistic. It tells you Russia's defensive envelope either underestimated the threat, failed to adapt, or was overwhelmed. For a site that important in a heavily militarized region, that is damning. What matters is not just that structures burned, it's what was inside them. If even a portion of the claimed 1,000 drones and 1,500 warheads were destroyed or rendered unusable, this is a strategic shock to Russia's drone war capacity from that sector of the front. And the signal sent is razor sharp. Your safe rear is not safe. If you're still watching, by the way, you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel is built for. The detailed, patient ones who don't just want explosions, you want consequences. So consider subscribing now so you don't miss the next breakdown. Let's get back to how this changes the game. To understand the impact, compare two scenarios. In the first, Russia launches 80 Shaheds at Ukrainian cities. Air defenses scramble, missiles fire, guns blaze. Many drones are shot down, a few get through, and everyone calls it a long night. In the second, before those drones ever launch, the place where they are stored, armed, and fueled is located and wiped out. The first scenario is expensive defense and constant stress. The second is strategic offense. Shahed drones are dangerous, not because any single one is advanced, but because they are disposable. They are designed to be used in swarms. To make that possible, you need to supply airframes, engines, explosives, fuel, trained crews, maintenance cycles, and logistics hubs that can process them in volume. Destroying a hub like Donetsk Airport doesn't just stop one wave. It tears a hole in the pipeline. It forces Russia to find new places to move drones, new routes, new warehouses, and new protection. It buys Ukraine something more valuable than a single quiet night: time and disruption. If the 1,000 figure is even close, the amount of lost potential is enormous. Even at lower real numbers, the psychological and logistical effect is brutal. You don't quickly replace a prepared stockpile of ready-to-use drones and warheads in a theater already stretched by sanctions, production constraints, and multiple fronts. And remember, every time Russia is forced to disperse, to hide, to fragment its logistics, it gets sloppier. More movements, more signatures, more chances for Ukraine and open source analysts to spot patterns again. That is why this strike matters so much more than just look at that explosion. This is the difference between swatting mosquitoes and draining the swamp. Now, let's flip perspectives. Imagine you are a Russian commander responsible for long-range drone operations in this sector. For months, you've relied on Donetsk Airport. You've been told it's covered by layered air defenses, electronic warfare, and hardened infrastructure. You've grown comfortable. Then, one night, you watch your supposed fortress erupt on camera. You see multi-stage detonations, huge plumes, secondary blasts that keep going. You see Ukrainian footage, geolocated and verified. You see your own local channels accidentally confirming the scale before the sensors wake up. And then, someone in Moscow asks you if you can guarantee the safety of the next major stockpile. That is the real damage. The Donetsk strike shatters the illusion that distance and fortifications equal immunity. If Ukraine can hit there with that accuracy, what about other airfields, other depots, fuel farms, railheads? Russia now has 3 unappealing choices. Concentrate again and risk another Donetsk. Disperse everything into smaller clusters, which increases cost, complexity, and the surface area Ukraine can target. Or divert more air defense and infrastructure protection to the rear, weakening the front. Whichever path they choose, Ukraine has forced them to spend resources defending instead of attacking. It has imposed a tax on Russia's war machine. What makes this operation even more important is that it fits a growing pattern in Ukraine's approach. Over the past year, we've seen Ukraine steadily ramp up long-range strikes on military and energy infrastructure, inside both occupied territories and Russia itself. Refineries, fuel depots, command posts, airfields, drone production, and storage facilities. This is not random revenge. It is a doctrine. If you hit us with missiles and drones, we will hit the places that make those attacks possible. The Donetsk Airport strike checks every doctrinal box. It was intelligence-driven, multi-domain, deeply targeted at logistics, not just hardware. It combined Ukraine's maturing unmanned systems forces, its special operations community, and its growing domestic long-range strike capabilities into one coherent blow. For Ukraine's partners watching from afar, this is proof of concept. Give Ukraine reach and data, and it uses them in a way that is rational, focused, and strategically meaningful. This is the kind of operation Western planners like to see. Limited collateral, maximum military effect. For Ukrainians on the ground, it is something else. A message that the terror they face at night is not a one-way street. Do not underestimate the symbolic weight. Donetsk Airport has been central to Russian narratives since the early days of this war. Cyborgs, close-quarter combat, ruin, and triumph. Turning that space into a Shahed hub and then watching it detonate under Ukrainian fire is more than a tactical event. It is a story reversal. For pro-Russian audiences in occupied territories, seeing the sky blazing above a supposedly fortified site sows fear. If this can happen there, where else is vulnerable? If that much explosive force is stored near their homes, what else are they living next to? For Ukrainian audiences and for viewers around the world who follow this war closely, Donetsk is a reminder that Russia's capacity to wage long-range terror is not infinite. It can be mapped, it can be degraded, it can be punished. And for Russia's leadership, it introduces doubt into every boast. Every time they promise overwhelming waves of drones, someone can quietly ask, and where are we keeping them? And who knows? By the way, if you appreciate having this kind of layered view instead of just a 30-second clip on social media, this is your moment to help push back against the algorithm. Drop a like, leave a comment with what you want us to dissect next, and it genuinely tells the platform that people still care about serious coverage of this war. So what actually changes now? First, Russia will adapt. They will move remaining stocks, split them, harden them, shift launch origins. They may try to push more production or storage further away from Ukrainian access. They will absolutely increase operational security and distrust leaks even more. But all of that takes time and resources. None of it is free. Second, Ukraine has shown a replicable method. Identify high-value drone and missile infrastructure. Validate it with layered intelligence. Use unmanned systems and long-range fires in a coordinated strike. Aim not for headlines, but for the enemy's logistics bloodstream. Third, every successful strike like this strengthens Ukraine's argument internationally that enabling long-range precision is not escalation for escalation's sake, but a way to reduce the volume of terror attacks on civilians. And finally, Donetsk raises the stakes for every other drone hub Russia operates. Commanders now live with the knowledge that they are managing potential fireworks displays waiting for Ukrainian targeting data. You can move equipment. You cannot easily move that fear. In the end, what happened at Donetsk Airport can be summed up in one line. Ukraine didn't just intercept drones, it intercepted the future launches. A suspected major Shahed logistics, storage, and launch hub was turned into a chain of fireballs in a single, well-planned operation. It exposed Russian vulnerabilities. It validated Ukraine's growing strike capabilities. It sent a brutal warning to every similar facility feeding the war. If you power attacks on Ukrainian cities, you are on the list. Somewhere tonight, far from the cameras, there is another fenced-off area, another row of hangars, another commander standing in front of stacked drones, fuel trucks, and warheads. A place that was supposed to be safe, a place that now feels like Donetsk, waiting to happen. The question hanging in the air is simple: who gets hit next? This is MilitaryHUB. If you want more deep dive breakdowns of operations like this, more context behind every mysterious explosion, and more honest analysis of how this war is evolving, don't just scroll away. Tap into the next video on your screen, stay with us, and let's keep tearing away the myths from the battlefield reality together.